as you know, we had a particularly violent weekend starting Friday all the way up to this morning, I believe. And but first, let me offer condolence to the family of those who had passed away as a result of the violence that occurred. You know, when I was out at the scene on the juvenile shooting on Friday, I was asked by a reporter about whether or not the level of that violence is something that the community should be concerned about. And what my response then and now is that any level of violence we should be concerned about, no matter what it is. And as you know, when it happens and children are involved, is particularly troubling to me personally, I know to everyone up here, and to the community at large. And we are all searching for resolutions to the issues that cause. And as I've said many times before, there are many things that cause crime, and we can talk about those things at another time. But today, we're talking about the law enforcement side, because these were, in our opinion, senseless acts of violence. And so as we move ahead, we want to make sure that our citizens know that these senseless acts of violence, whether it's just one or there are multiple ones, are not tolerated by myself or anybody up here, and I know it is not tolerated by the community. Now, we are investing in the law enforcement side this year, and we will be next year. We have the NICE unit, the Gang Impact unit, and other investments this year, plus additional and significant investments going into next year. The next thing I want to do is really thank the public. There were some tips and some information that we received that really helped us to solve the things that we have solved, and that we ask for their continuing support and information that they've been giving us. I'll turn this over to Chief Williams, who will go through this aspect, and the county prosecutor, Mr. O'Malley, and then Lieutenant Pillar of the homicide unit is here to talk about anything in particular that you want to know that he can tell you about in regards to each of these incidents that happened over the weekend. Chief?
Thanks, Mayor. As the Mayor stated, definitely our condolences go out to all the victims' families out there, definitely the victims that are recovering. We wish them a speedy recovery in all this. The day after Thanksgiving was definitely a trying one for the city and division. It started off as a normal day here in the city of Cleveland, not much going on, and ended with 6 people shot, 6 juveniles. One of those juveniles, unfortunately, a 12-year-old, lost his life. And as the mayor stated, you know, one violent incident in the city is one too many. And we know that the public is behind us, so we need to continue to ask for their assistance in solving these crimes and getting those bad apples, and apples is a real kind word, getting those folks out of our community. On Friday night, there were multiple shots fired in the area of 117th and Buckeye Road, again, at which time 6 juveniles were struck. One juvenile fatally, Abdul Bashidi, died as a result of his gunshot wounds, and again, our condolences out to that family. We know they had to bury their son this past weekend. As a result of that, our homicide unit, along with the Gang Impact Squad, our NICE unit, 4th District officers from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, and the FBI, descended on that scene and started the investigative process. As a result of that, we had arrest warrants issued for 2 juveniles that we know were involved in this case. One juvenile was subsequently arrested. 15-year-old Amir Taylor is in custody now at the detention center, juvenile detention center. But we also have an arrest warrant for Tavion Gideons. Tavion Gideons is a 15-year-old black male that we're looking for in connection with this shooting, and there is an arrest warrant filed for his arrest with the County Juvenile Detention Center. As the mayor also stated, the public was instrumental in identifying these folks and identifying some of the things that may have led up to this. So we need to continue to get that information into our investigators because we're far from done with this case and others. Also, this past weekend, as early as yesterday evening, there was a homicide in the area of Parkmont, 180th block, where there was a male killed. We currently have 2 people under arrest for that homicide, and they will be charged here shortly. There is also the incident that a lot of people reported on of a female being shot in her home, in a living room on the east side on Cornell Avenue. And there are some other things about that we won't get into for sensitivity to the family, but there are other aspects that were involved in that homicide case. That home was the attention of our 4th District officers as well as our narcotics officers for numerous drug complaints. But again, we still need the public's help in identifying the person that pulled the trigger in that incident as well. All these incidents highlight the need for, as the mayor said, for us to look at the entirety of what causes violence and crime in our city. And law enforcement is just the tip of that, and we're going to do everything possible with our partners here to make sure we get on this and that we get these things solved. But again, I have to stress, the public's help is instrumental in solving a lot of these crimes. So if there's an unsolved homicide or crime of violence here in the city of Cleveland, you can call Crime Stoppers at 25-CRIME. If it's a homicide, you can call our homicide unit direct, 216-623-5464. If there's a wanted person out there, like the person I just mentioned, Tavion Gideons, we're looking for him. If you know where he's at, you can call our Violent Fugitive Task Force, U.S. Marshals, Fugitive Task Force, and that number is 1-866-4-wanted, 1-866-4-wanted. Any of these numbers will get a response from local law enforcement here in handling the things that happen here in the city of Cleveland. So again, we need the public's help. Continue to call those tips in. We're going to respond to every tip that comes in. Again, our hearts go out to the families from this past weekend. There are a lot of other things out there floating around that we have to get closure on, so we ask the public's help in that. With that said, I'm going to bring up our County Prosecutor, Mike O'Malley.
Thank you, Chief. First and foremost, my prayers and thoughts go out to the Bashidi family, as well as for prayers to the victims of this senseless tragedy that occurred on Buckeye Road. One individual has been arrested. As the mayor and the police chief indicate, we are currently searching for another 15-year-old. When they are apprehended, when the other one is apprehended, they will be charged in the county juvenile court, and we will be seeking bind-over charges to bring these individuals to adult court to answer for these crimes. As county prosecutor these past 10 or 11 months, it is clear, and it's clear to everybody within this community, that we have an epidemic of youth violence, and it is up to all of us in this community, their families, their neighbors, their community, to work with us to help us solve this issue. In my 10 years in the county prosecutor's office, certainly it appears to be increasing, but it is only through the hard work and the dedication of our law enforcement partners, the mayor and his staff, that we can quickly resolve these things. But it is clear that we have a problem that needs to be solved, it needs to be handled. But again, that's, as the mayor indicates, that's a discussion for another day. But I want to personally thank the Cleveland Police Department for their hard work, Chief Williams and his men, for quickly leading to this point where we have arrests made and other individuals who are suspects. Thank you.
Questions?
Can you tell us what charges they'll face, or they do face? Can you list them off for us?
Aggravated murder, attempted murder, amongst the initial ones. You know, certainly there's one individual who's passed away. Again, my prayers are with the rest, but these individuals did some significant damage to a lot of people's lives. So right now they're looking at aggravated murder charges to start with, and again, we will be seeking bind over of these juveniles to adult court to answer for these crimes.
So they'll both be charged with that?
Yes, but again, because they're under 16, the bind over process is discretionary with individuals who are 15. If they were 16 or 17, it'd be mandatory. So that will be up to the juvenile court. If the court finds that the juvenile court can help resolve their issues, they can keep them in the juvenile court because of their age, or they can send them to adult court. That'll be up to the juvenile court judge who has assigned this matter.
The circumstances of the shooting as of Friday night were pretty unclear. Is there anything that you can elaborate on about how that occurred?
Just what we gave you guys Friday night. We can't really get into great detail because, again, the investigation is ongoing. There are a lot of pieces of this puzzle that we have to put together. But from what we see, there was nothing at that moment between those two groups that would have sparked this type of a violent response. And I neglected to say, Prosecutor O'Malley is a great partner of us here in the city of Cleveland, and he had a prosecutor on site the night this thing happened, working closely with our homicide detectives and our other officers out there if we need to obtain search warrants and things like that. And that's kind of how the prosecutor's operated since he's been in office.
Chief Williams, speaking to those in the community and those business folk there, they were saying that there could have been possibly gang-related between two different groups. Has there been any truth to that? Are you able to talk about that?
There is no official gang affiliation that we can come up with right now. Where there are two separate groups, of course. But we don't know what the factors are that motivated the one group to actually open fire on the other group. And then I think what can't be lost on everybody here is why is a 15-year-old walking around with a handgun? Why are 2 or 3 15-year-olds walking around with handguns? I mean, we have, Facebook posts and things like that of kids in their basements, bathrooms, living rooms posing with weapons. So our parents need to get a little more nosy in what's going on in their homes and make sure their kids aren't walking out the door with a gun on them.
Do you know how many of those teen suspects actually fired the shots? How many had guns?
No, we can't really, again, get exactly into all that specific, but once the lieutenant and his folks start to wind this investigation down, we'll come back with those specifics.
Generally speaking, do you think kids today use weapons instead of talking it out or even fighting it out as they did previously? Why are 15-year-olds using guns?
Well, not to really be facetious about it, but I mean, what do you guys think? I mean, you're out there just like we're out there. What do you think?
I mean, I'm not the police chief.
Well, again, I mean, we're all, adult-thinking people, and you guys cover this stuff every time it happens. You tell me what you think.
And I will add that it's the availability of guns. And the chief's question about how does a 15-year-old get a gun, it's not that difficult. It's really not that difficult. The availability of guns on the street and powerful guns in the hands of immature people lead to these kind of outcomes. So it's the availability of guns that really is troubling also.
Mayor, you said now is not the time to talk about solutions. When is
I
the
wasn't
time?
not talking about solution. I'm talking about the preventive side. See, when I've always said and continue to say that crime is a symptom, just like the question that was just asked. When you look at crime, it manifests itself, but it's not the cause of anything. It's the symptom of other things. So that is around social and economic situations, empowerment, wealth, jobs, careers, those kind of things that that people who are the beneficiaries of those things tend not to be part of violent crime. And we're working on that. We're working on how do we connect young people with opportunities, have better choices. I just left my weekly meeting with the school superintendent around education and improving our educational outcomes. We met earlier today with Say Yes for Education, along with 16 college and university presidents and their people who deal with admission to their colleges and universities to talk about how do we give young people other opportunities. We're meeting with business people to see if there are internships or job opportunities, whether it be summer jobs or working after school, exposure to something other than what they see every day. But when a kid can then go out and pick up a gun, and these are just, I don't know if I'm allowed to say, but these are apparently handguns. Yes. And these are the lightweight weapons that are out on the streets. You have some AR-15s, you have AK-47s, you have all kind of heavy-duty weaponry out on the street. And it shouldn't be there. So when we're looking at solutions, we're looking at it in a social, economic empowerment kind of way, but we're also looking at it in the enforcement way. We're working on both ends. We do our part in terms of law enforcement, and we're doing our part in terms of creating opportunities so that we can have prevention, intervention in these opportunities. But it is a community effort that will be the only solution. It has to be owned, the success or failure, by everyone, not just the police department, not just us as elected officials, but the media, the corporate community, the educational community. Everyone has to own this in terms of whether it's successful or whether it's a failure. It can't be somebody else's problem.
Chief, are you going to, can you spell and say the person, last name, the chief that you are charged for, make sure you get our facts right?
We're going to give you that information at the end of this because I don't want to get it wrong in my spelling here. So we'll give it to you.
In a piece of paper, or someone's actually going to spell it out? Or-
Yeah, well, Jen will send all that out to you guys. Anything else? No?
And we will be back once we have further information
Yes.
and give you that information, not only on this particular one, but the others that, there's two more that we have not had an arrest in. Is that correct,
Yes.
Lieutenant?
Yes.
Right, so there are two more we haven't had an arrest in, so we'll be back with you with that once we move on that. All right? All right, thank you.